Hello and welcome to the Supporting, Improving, and Securing Finance, IT, and Cloud Environments Ecocast event by Actual Tech Media. On this event, you'll hear from our experts at Rubrik, Crowdstrike, AirKit, and Okta. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is David Davis of Actual Tech Media. I'll be serving as the moderator. We've got a great event lined up for you today on the Ecocast. Now, before we get started, there's just a few things that you should know about the Ecocast. Today, we've got a number of awesome prizes. I'll talk about those here in just a moment. We will have some questions for you in the form of poll questions, and we appreciate your participation in those. We also encourage your questions. We want this to be an educational event, as we do with all of our Ecocast events at Actual Tech Media. We're all former IT professionals ourselves here at Actual Tech Media. We know how tough it can be in the world of enterprise IT, and we want to help you to solve your technology challenges. So keep those questions coming there in the questions pane, and we even have our best question prize to help encourage questions. I'll talk more about that here in just a moment. We also want this to be a social event. You can tweet directly from your audience console using the Twitter icon, and the hashtag for today will be automatically appended. And then finally, we have a number of resources you should check out there in the Handouts tab, ebooks, special links, solution briefs. You want to make sure that you check out those resources before the event wraps up today. Now, our prizes on the Ecocast today are 3 Amazon $500 gift cards. You must be live in attendance to qualify. The winners will be announced by me, the moderator, during the event. And as I mentioned, we also have our best question prize for a $50 Amazon gift card, but not one $50 Amazon gift card for each of our Q&A sessions on the event today. So keep those questions coming. Winners will be selected and contacted after the event, and of course must meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. The requirements to be eligible for the prize drawings are, of course, you must be on the live event, and all prize winners must be able to submit an IRS Form W-9 to Actual Tech Media. All winners have the option to make a donation to selected charities that you see here on the screen. We've donated thousands of dollars to charities over the years, and if you win a prize, we would love to help you do that. The prize terms and conditions can be found right there in your Handouts tab. Now, as I mentioned, we want this to be a social event. If you tweet from the console, the hashtag for today, ATM Ecocast, will be automatically appended. You can follow Actual Tech Media and me, David M. Davis, on Twitter as well. Subscribe to all the Actual Tech Media social channels on YouTube, Facebook, and our 10 on Tech podcast over in the iTunes podcast directory. And don't forget to follow Actual Tech Media on LinkedIn. You can do that right there using the LinkedIn icon on your console as well. I also want to encourage you to check out the Actual Tech Media Gorilla Guide book series and book club. You can find a link to that there in your Handouts tab, or just point your web browser to gorilla.guide. That's where you can download free, easy-to-read enterprise IT books authored by top industry experts. It's a great way to stay up to date. You can download these to your Kindle or mobile device, whatever it might be, and read them at your leisure. We also encourage you to refer your IT friends or coworkers to Actual Tech Media's online events, and both you and your friend or coworker could win an Amazon $300 gift card. We hold those drawings once a month. At the end of the event, you'll be automatically redirected to our Refer a Friend page, but you can go there now if you click on the Refer a Friend link there in your Handouts tab. Now, before I introduce you to today's first expert presenter, I want to talk here for just a moment about today's topic in the form of 5 things that you should know about modernizing and securing financial services IT organizations. Because FinServ IT is different and unique than other forms of IT. Financial services include banks and investment companies, but also things like insurance, real estate, tax planning, and they're highly regulated environments, much more focused on compliance perhaps than other verticals, with maybe the exception only being healthcare. Now, traditional financial organizations might not innovate as rapidly, or they're not known for innovating as rapidly, perhaps, as other verticals. But on the other hand, you've got new startup fintech companies that are really pushing the limits of technology innovation in the financial services space. So if you're in this space, I'm sure you know just how unique it is. And at the same time, security is critical. I mean, you're dealing with so much personal information, PII, personally identifiable information, and people's financial data that you've got to really secure that data even more so than the traditional enterprise. And we'll be talking a lot about security, of course, on today's Ecocast. And this comes at a time especially when you see financial organizations being attacked left and right with ransomware attacks and data breaches, and people's personal information and financial data being posted publicly out on the internet and being sold to the highest bidder. So I'm sure no more in the history of IT has security been as critical as it is today. And that's because, of course, financial services are more prone to attack and fraud. They're the biggest target, or one of the biggest targets out there, simply because of all that personally identifiable information that's just so valuable. And really, for us in IT, I mean, visibility is critical. You don't want to find out that an attacker has been in your organization for months or a year, which has been the case with many of these data breaches. We need to know not only that our data is secure, but that it's protected. We have to have processes in place to really know what's going on with our company's data, with our authentication, with our logging, and of course, with our compliance, because compliance is a must. It's regulated, it's required in financial services organizations. You're required by law to protect that data. And if you don't, there are serious consequences and penalties. And finally, the last thing on my list of the things that you should know about modernizing and securing FinServ IT is to continually look for new and innovative solutions, because there are solutions out in the market like the ones you'll learn about today that can help to better secure, to better protect, to give you greater visibility, and to help improve compliance in your unique financial services organization. And with that, I've got a few poll questions for you. All right, first poll question of the day here is on the screen, and that is, which of these are your greatest challenge in your financial IT organization? This is a multi-select question, so feel free to select more than one answer there. And I will share the results of this with you, and you can kind of see how you stack up with your peers who are on today's Ecocast. I added a final option on the list of answers there that says other. So if you've got a challenge that's not on this list, select that and just drop it in the questions pane, and I'll share your challenge with everyone out here on the audience. We do want to hear from you. I want to help to improve this poll for the future as well. So here's a good other response that's not on the list from Garrett. Thank you, Garrett. Garrett said, dealing with COVID and budget restrictions caused by the pandemic. I should have added that. I bet that a lot of organizations out there are dealing with that same challenge. So thank you for sharing that, Garrett. All right, thank you to everyone who responded to this poll. Let me share the results. And it looks like 66% said security and compliance is their greatest challenge that they're facing right now, followed by 40% that said data protection and disaster recovery. And then really kind of a tie between all the other options on the list there, modernizing legacy applications, ease of innovation with new apps, data management, budgets, staffing, finding the right people. So thank you everyone for sharing with that, sharing your response there to that poll. Another response came in here. They said that they're dealing with multi-cloud and on-premises environments. So kind of, I'm sure that cloud migration and perhaps just some complexities created around leveraging the cloud. So interesting to know. Good feedback. Thank you for that, Arun. We appreciate your feedback as well. All right, and then next poll or last poll before I introduce you to our first presenter, and that is simply, what's your time frame for taking some action here in regards to updating your existing IT solutions, whether they're hardware or software or cloud, or adding a new solution, maybe improving your security since that was the #1 response, with some additional security solution. All right, thank you to everyone who responded to that poll. And with that, it's now time to introduce you to today's first presenter on the Ecocast. I'm excited now to bring in Mr. Mark Murphy, who's a systems engineer at Rubrik. Mark, it's great to have you on. Take it away.
Hello, my name is Mark Murphy. I'm a systems engineer with Rubrik. I'm going to take you through what Rubrik is doing for the financial services industry. First, let's take a quick look at the agenda. It'll be an overview of requirements that we're seeing coming down from the business, what we see as required by the folks that are running the data protection within that industry. An intro to Rubrik, hey, what's Rubrik doing about these requirements, and get you through a demo. So from a requirements standpoint, here's what we see coming down. We see data management and data protection becoming more of a boardroom conversation than it was in the past. So regulations such as FINRA requirements, SEC 1784, coming up more often. Cybersecurity, of course, being in the news, being able to protect our privacy of our customers. And we're getting a lot of external pressure from our customers to protect the data, make sure that it's locked down and that the data is safe with our industry. What that means from a data protection standpoint is this: we're still dealing with a number of fragmented hardware and software issues in the field. So master servers, media servers, things like that, all tied together to protect our data. Even if we manage to take care of that, we still have a fairly complex backup process, meaning jobs tied to schedules, tied to Windows, these VMs at 6, these VMs at 7, and so forth, that we have to manage to protect the data. It's also difficult to test recovery, not just for the machines themselves, but to prove that we have a solid disaster recovery plan with our data protection strategy, that we have an immutable copy off-site that can't be affected, what we consider to be an air gap copy. Next, the big problem we're seeing is the backups themselves are not secure. So the #1 disaster recovery event now isn't a natural disaster, but rather is a ransomware attack. Ransomware variants are being written to go encrypt the data on your backups first, then on your file servers and application servers and so forth. And they do that just to make sure that we can't recover and that they get paid. What we need inside of this, and typically don't have, is a way of detecting ransomware as it's traversing our environment. How does your backup system even know that it's been hit? Also, from a reporting standpoint, how do we simplistically get a report to prove to our auditors that we're actually meeting these requirements? Lastly, what we're looking for and what we don't see a lot of are businesses that are cloud ready in financial services. So it's really a matter of getting our security standards and our protection standards ported to data in the cloud. And that seems to be our biggest shortcoming. So how do we get data running out there? How do we natively protect it? How do we test it out and so forth? So from a Rubrik standpoint, what Rubrik is out to do is modernize and simplify the backup and recovery process itself. So consolidate the hardware stack, get rid of all the single points of failure, get us into a realm where we've got a simplistic policy to go manage all this data without having to get particularly granular, let the system itself discover new virtual machines and databases and protect those for us. Lower the recovery time objective so we can get these machines up and running in a much faster fashion rather than having to wait for it to restore. Lower our recovery point objective so we're protecting more often throughout the day. And lastly, tie it into whatever broader frameworks we have from a service management standpoint. So we're not managing individual entities just like backup and recovery, but rather whatever the broader picture is, make sure that we're using our APIs to go tie in with that picture. Second is comply with the regulations. So give us a way to validate that these backups are actually good. So go make a bunch of machines appear so I can test against those without having to affect production. Make sure this backup system has a way to detect the ransomware and remediate from it quickly. Get that research project of trying to figure out what data was hit, when it was hit, and how quickly can I recover it down to a minimum. A big piece of what we're doing is around user access control and retention locks. So not only locking down the backups themselves, but really getting granular on how we allow access into Rubrik itself, being that it's really the last line of defense. And lastly, data governance and compliance, knowing what's inside of this data, who has access to it, where is the PII in my environment. And thirdly, enable cloud capabilities. Get the data out to the cloud in a very secure fashion, make sure it's encrypted, user access control is in place. Launch those VMs in the cloud. So be able to take a virtual machine and launch it in AWS or Azure or Google Cloud. Test our lift and shift. Protect VMs that are now natively running in the cloud. And make sure that it's cloud vendor agnostic. So if we need to shift from one place to another, that's a possibility. Just to give an example of a cyber resilience mandate called Appendix J. So things we're doing around this, some of their requirements are anomaly detection remediation. So being able to make sure that the data itself isn't able to be accessed from the outside. So Rubrik's file system cannot be mounted up by NFS or SMB and affected externally. Use machine learning to look at heuristics inside of these files to say, hey, not just the change rate is different than what we'd expect, but that the contents of the actual files in question have actually changed. Role-based access control and retention lock. So this is really given way into a bigger conversations around single sign-on, around multi-factor authentication, and more recently, a new acronym, TOTP, which is a time-based one-time password. So even if an attacker has our AD credentials, they still can't get into our backup and recovery system. An air-gapped architecture. So if we have a breach, making sure that we have a third off-site copy that's immutable and cannot be affected by that attacker. So originally you'd see solutions around this being, I'd go buy 3 of these hardware appliances, spread them out, and use scripting to bring them on and off the network. Well, with the availability of cloud and Rubrik's ability to get the data to the cloud as soon as the backup is done, we can lock that down using a separate set of credentials just to get a copy off-site. And lastly, give us a reporting framework. Just make reporting and auditing easy for us. So alert on these anomalies, give us a quick way to recover, give us a quick way to export the details of our activities for auditors. So that's the first part. So let me take you through a demo of Rubrik. So this is Rubrik's UI. All HTML5, it's all cluster-based architecture, so we can lose a node or drives inside of the cluster and it's still standing. It scales by adding more nodes to the cluster and life cycles by adding more nodes and then ejecting the old nodes. But it comes back with some things you'd expect. Backups, conversion is us taking a VM and turning it on in the cloud. Archive is us copying data to the cloud. But all these are live links inside of the system itself. You'll see live mounts, so that's us taking a virtual machine or database and presenting it directly back to a hypervisor and launching it so I can run testing against it without affecting production. Data reduction, so compression and deduplication ratios, and just a list of objects. Virtual machines, databases, physical servers are in here, NAS shares, cloud native can be in here as well as service level agreements. And this is really the heart and soul of Rubrik. So the service level agreement says, how often do we back up any object being a VM or database? How long do we keep it? How many dailies, how many monthlies, and so forth. And where does it go? Do we just keep a copy on-prem? Do we keep a copy in the cloud? And I'll take you through that in just a minute. And lastly, just capacity metrics, how much data is being stored here locally, how much has been archived outside of the cluster itself. And there are a number of dashboards in here, like compliance. So if I want a quick way to look at compliance, hey, have we met our SLAs as we've set them up? That's all in here as well. This can all be downloaded. This can all be sent to reporting as well. So let me take you through setting up an SLA. So we'll call this FinTech 1. And here's where we can come in and say, all right, I want to protect my VMs or databases or whatever we throw at it. So once a day for the first 30 days and say once a month for, we'll just pick 36 months, but you kind of get the idea. But you can also get a little more granular. You come in and say, hey, I want to back up every 4 hours for the first day. And we can enable things like continuous data protection. So if I want to roll a VM right back down to the second, that's actually possible inside of the SLA itself. You can control the snapshot window. What we'll find out in the field is most deployments of Rubrik are not actually setting the snapshot window, meaning we're just letting Rubrik make up its mind when it's going to back up those VMs and databases. There's an immense amount of throttling built into Rubrik, such as no more than 3 VMs per ESX server at any given time. What it makes it safe to do is say, hey, Rubric 1,000 VMs go without affecting production. So that's the first tab. The second tab says, where does the data go? So replication would be a rubric to rubric replication where you say, hey, if we're keeping 3 days of backups, maybe I want to keep some number of days, say 50 days at the DR site. Likewise, we can set up an archive location. This can be and is oftentimes public cloud. So we'll set up a cloud archive target, for example. And here's where you come in and say, all right, we need to hold our backups for 3 years for audit purposes, but all my restores are coming from the first 30 days. So the design center of Rubric isn't to go store 3 years of data, but rather give you a quick way to recover and index the data over the past, however many days you're performing a restore. So if you're performing restores from the last, say, 7 days, maybe we'll keep 14 inside of the cluster itself. We can also enable instant archive, which says as soon as a backup's done, don't wait for 14 days to kick it out of the cluster to the cloud, but as soon as backup's done, get that copy out to the cloud itself. That way you've got the most recent copy and it's air gapped and sitting in the cloud. But that's it. That's half the battle. We've now created a policy inside of Rubric to say I'm going to back up every 4 hours and continuously. From there, we can go discover vSphere, Hyper-V, Acropolis, it's all in here. I can come in and pick a server or two and say you and you, go manage protection, and go apply it to my tech SLA. And if I mouse over it, you can get the geometry of how long we're going to keep it. And if I say next and finish, it would kick off. So it'll do a full backup once. From there on, it's incremental forever. So another note about Rubric is it's no longer performing weekly fulls or reverse incrementals, things like that. It's actually just incremental forever. It's pulling just the change blocks for your databases and virtual machines and physical servers into Rubric. So that's backups. From there, you can come in and start performing restores. So what you can do is use our global search to go search for a VM. You can see this is a Windows VM that I'm pulling up. Its SLA says it's backing up every 4 hours. It's archiving out to AWS. And how far back the backups go, you'll even have an activity log of all of the backups and so forth, any activities associated with that virtual machine for audit purposes. But from a restore perspective, all you have to do is on the calendar, pick a date and pick an action. So from here, I can recover files, for example, go explore the C drive and D drive, export it, go make a copy back in vSphere of this VM. But I also have mount and instant recover. And you can actually do this in bulk if you want to. You can say, hey, take this virtual machine and go make it appear over on an ESX cluster. So as part of our security offering, you can take, say, some number of dozens of these virtual machines, go make them appear back in ESX, assign them to an offline port group, and run security scans against them for backup validation. That way, you're not running security scans against your production VMs. Instant recover, so if we've blue screened after loading a patch, we can quickly get it back. It does the same sort of work, but actually shuts down the running VM and brings us up with the same name and IP address. You also have launch on cloud. So if we're connected to, in this case, AWS, I can take this VM. It'll actually go convert it into AWS AMI and launch it in the cloud for me. And likewise, everything inside of this is indexed. So if I were to say, show me Notepad, every time we ever saw the expression Notepad inside of this server, it'll show up on a list for restoration. So here we've got the list, notepad.exe. If I click that, you can see every time it ever saw a notepad. And if you go back far enough, you might even see some that are living out in the cloud, but that doesn't affect the way we do a restore. Data that's sent to the cloud is deduped, compressed, and encrypted. And from there, I can restore it directly back over the top of my originals. So looking at a few other objects here, we can protect virtual machines, physical servers are in here, SQL databases, Oracle databases. Reporting is all built into Rubric. So I can come in and get my audit reports. I can get very granular about what's being reported on. So if I need specific Objects to be reported on specific VMs that are in a particular time range, that's possible. And this can all be emailed to you every day. So your usual green is good, red is bad, so reports, it's our lab, so you can see we have a number of failures you can report on. Make it fairly simplistic. So an accompanying offer to Rubrik is called Polaris. So Polaris is a software as a service site. So this runs natively in the cloud and takes information created by our backups. Originally, it was for multi-site management, so I could manage Rubrik deployments all over the planet. What we can now do is protect cloud native assets. So if you start running a VM in, say, AWS or Azure, we can actually create an SLA out in Polaris and protect those VMs. So I can back them up, I can do file level recovery, I can restore them from one region to another. So fairly in-depth as it comes to data protection. Now, the interesting thing here is it doesn't egress any data, it keeps the data in the cloud and doesn't require any kind of persistent compute. It simply starts up Rubrik, protects that VM in the cloud, then shuts down. Likewise for Azure, likewise for AWS relational database systems, Microsoft 365. On top of that, we also have our machine learning built in. So the ability to come out here, have Rubrik create a baseline for the VMs that we're protecting. So you can see, hey, this is our normal basis. And then at this point, we'll run a ransomware simulator to go delete and create a bunch of files. So what it's done is said, hey, not only is that amount of activity abnormal for you, but based on heuristics, we now see that the files that changed are now encrypted. Do you want to recover? So what it's doing for us is getting rid of the research project associated with ransomware. So I can say, oh, it's the file share directory, and you can get all the way down to the individual file if you're interested under that. But that's the directory of files. Those are 1,800 and some files that were changed. Give me the option of either downloading it so I can move it to a fresh server, I can overwrite the original, recover to a different folder on the same server. But essentially give me a way to quickly identify data that's been hit by ransomware and recover it. Also inside of Rubrik is our compliance and governance system, the ability to look at the backups because we're bringing it all to us on Rubrik, being able to open up that data, look for personally identifiable information. So if you have PCI or you're under, say, GDPR sort of requirements, we can actually come in here and actually look at those and set up analyzers. But what you get inside of that now is the ability to see where all of your PII actually lives. And you can drill down into these individual servers. So not only can I see where the data lives, I can see now who has access to it. So I could say, hey, this file share has access by these users. And is that what I expect or not expect? Do I expect the data to be here? So give me a simplistic way to go identify where this data actually lives. And actually interesting, one of the ways you can do that is everything that you're seeing here is just sending API commands back to Rubrik. Well, if Rubrik can do that, and our UI is just consuming our API, so can anything else, including ServiceNow. So if you want to go tie ServiceNow in with your Rubrik cluster, just to have it along with everything else tied into one place, that's actually possible. If you want to create or push user-directed restores of files or databases down to end users, that's actually possible within Rubrik as well. So to wrap up, from a demo standpoint, a couple things here, a couple of success stories I'd like to share with you. Grove Bank of Trust, they had difficulty in protecting some of the data, protecting, they had a relatively inefficient backup process, as I'm sure some of you are familiar with. But ultimately, they were able to drive down the recovery time objective, increase their compliance, being able to certify what was backed up and not backed up, really shorten their audit process. Likewise with Compare Financial, so the ability to meet their RTOs, their RPOs, bring some time savings to the IT team, so not having to spend so much time inside of the backup system itself, and provide self-service and restores to the database administrators. Well, thank you for all your time. That will be it for today. Please pass along any Q&A you have to us. Happy to dive deeper into security, into protection, into ransomware recovery. Anytime you like, just get with our local team. Thank you so much.
All right, great presentation. Thank you so much, Mark. We do appreciate that. I really love the demo. Thanks for sharing the demo with us. It's always cool to see products like Rubrik in action. I've just brought up the poll question for everyone out there that says, what additional information would you like about the Rubrik solution? And I'll leave that up here for a few moments and let everyone respond to this. The Rubrik team is taking your questions electronically and answering them as quickly as they can. So thank you for those questions. We do, of course, have our best question prize as well that we're doing today, so don't forget about that. So I'll give you a moment to respond to the poll. All right, I'll leave the poll up there for a moment for anyone who hasn't responded yet while I announce our first Amazon $500 gift card winner. This is going out to Trisha Patterson from Oregon. Congratulations, Trisha Patterson from Oregon. Still 2 more Amazon $500 gift cards to give out on the event today, so make sure you stay tuned for that, as well as our, of course, awesome presentations. Excellent. All right, with that, it's now time for our next presentation on today's Ecocast. Welcome, Spencer Parker, Senior Director for Product Management at Crowdstrike. Spencer, are you there?
I am indeed. Welcome, everybody.
Thanks for being on, Spencer. Take it away.
Excellent. Thank you. So, got a lot of stuff to get through today. We're going to race through this set of slides. Hopefully, there's a lot of value in here. Don't worry, not a product pitch today. This is very educational in terms of cloud security and some of the new threats that we're seeing there, etc. So, I hope you get some value out of this and enjoy it. And we have fun for the next 20 minutes. So, obviously today this is about improving and securing finance IT, in fact any IT within cloud security environments. The way cloud is being developed and the sort of DevSecOps mindset that we now need to have is pretty common actually across all verticals. Security is security at the end of the day, and finance systems just are much more heavily targeted than most others. So we're going to talk a little bit about the introduction, going to talk about the opportunity and challenges in this space. We're going to look at the different tool sets, like how we do discovery and posture management, and then runtime protection, and what some of the latest cloud attacks here are. Just to introduce myself, Spencer Parker. I'm Senior Director of Product Management here. I've been at CrowdStrike almost 4 years now, and been in this industry for a very long time. It's a very incestuous industry, is cyber. Previously at Sophos and WebSense, Cisco, ScanSafe, Air Defense, Nixon. That's pretty much the last 20 years of my life being in cybersecurity, and never a dull day in this space. I'm based in Oxford in the UK. So greetings from a hot and sticky UK, where summer's finally arrived over the last 3 days, a balmy 90 degrees and no air conditioning. Let's get into the presentation itself. Cloud security, there's so many different aspects to it, and 20 minutes today, we're going to barely scratch the surface. So let's talk about it really from a sort of very high level. And I suppose at the sort of the highest level here, this is how Gartner, for instance, looks at the cloud security space. And you can really break security down into these 3 key areas. So we have CASB, Cloud Access Security Brokers. These have been around a long time. How do I get visibility and security into other people's networks and other people's services that I'm buying that I don't have the ability to see? And there's been many different approaches to this over the years, from trying to encrypt data through services and things like that, through to bringing down the log files from these services and analyzing them and trying to do things in as close to real time as you can. A ton of other things as well now. And then we look at your clouds. So what can you do to create and to secure whatever clouds here we're talking about? So this isn't just public cloud, this is private clouds too. So, on the public side, AWS, GCP, Azure, they're the common ones that we see out there. There are many others. Plus, your own hybrid clouds, running your own TIN, ESXi servers and all sorts of other things, trying to ramp that stuff up, and in many cases in a hybrid scenario as well. And that's really, 2 sides here. Cloud workload protection, this is the more traditional, being able to do the likes of EDR and prevention of threats actually on your containers. And then there's CSPM, Cloud Security Posture Management. because the teams that are really embracing the cloud, they aren't just running your servers in the cloud, they're using the platform as a service as well. So they're using Lambda functions in AWS and Redshift and S3 buckets. And these are things you cannot actually install monitoring agents on. So you have to rely on the log files, the CloudTrail logs, and all of those types of things to be able to get access and visibility into that. And the combination of these three things is how we typically look at cloud security as a whole. Now, I mentioned about a hybrid cloud, and of course, every enterprise pretty much today is one. It doesn't matter, if you're using servers all internally, but you're using some SaaS services. Even the most staunch of anti-cloud customers that we've spoken to over the years are now fully embracing this sort of hybrid cloud approach. And it makes sense, both from a cost, from a speed of delivery, etc. This is the type of fast environments that we work in today. So we have to be able to work in this cloud, and we have to be able to secure it, because this can be a little bit of a minefield. I mean, the actual speed at which we roll out is always a security risk. And on top of that, the misconfigurations that can happen are huge. We probably, we could fill again another presentation talking about all of the data breaches that have happened because somebody has misconfigured an S3 bucket and made it public to the world, and boom, all that data was lost. These things, are unfortunate regular occurrence. So misconfigurations are a critical piece here, but understanding the control plane as well is also very, very critical. Let's talk a little bit more about that in a sec. So this enterprise cloud is very important, and the hybrid approach that many customers are taking to it as they start to use the public clouds, the private cloud, etc. It's all has to still be covered. Just because it's somebody else's tin doesn't mean you don't want to do security on it. And just because it's somebody else's tin, you can't assume that it's secure either. There is this sort of demarcation, especially in the public clouds, around what lines of security there are. What security does Amazon provide you compared with what security does, are you expected to provide as well? And those lines are very well drawn, they're very well understood. But often, in the DevOps world, these things don't have the rigor that we would like around them. So we have to enter into a DevSecOps world where security becomes part of the CI/CD pipeline. And we talk about that here. The CI/CD pipeline itself, allows us to really sort of get embedded at the very early stages of creation, the actual build pipeline. So this is what a lot of people refer to as shifting left. So we need to check at the build time of these images that they are secure. We all know about sunburst attacks. This is not going to be a session today going through what happened in Sunburst. It's very well documented now. This is exactly what happened there. So making sure that from the very production time of your instances in the build time to being able to constantly then monitor them within the runtime itself is very, very important. And we have CSPM over here on the build time, and then we have Cloud Workload Protection products over here on the right for the runtime. So without seeing all of that, you can be doomed to failure because security is all about visibility, as we know. So we need visibility at all ends of this. Otherwise, things can and will happen. And again, we also need to take a very adversary-focused approach to the threats that are happening there. So those adversary approaches are really sort of critical. We're going to talk a little bit more at the end about some of the latest threats that the adversaries are up to. But, we're doing a considerable amount of research now into the sort of cloud-native threats. The maturities that the adversaries have, the sort of capabilities are maturing very rapidly that the adversaries that have here on all clouds. AWS, GCP, Azure, you can't assume that all attacks work against all clouds. Of course they don't, because everybody has, the way their clouds work are different. But often if they find it's successful one way, they often find it successful for most ways. But most current attacks we see involve sort of adapting traditional techniques and taking a cloud-based approach to them. But we are starting to see more and more adversarial approaches now that are true sort of cloud attacks. You know, there's a lot of cloud attack frameworks out there. There's Pacu, there's Bark, Salesforce Endgame. You know, there's a lot of different, sort of packages you can buy off the dark web to do this and things like that that are around. There's a lot of ransomware. There's probably ransomware in the cloud right now is probably the most prevalent problem that we're seeing, that is directly, they're encrypting S3 buckets, things like that. The other really big problem that we have to date, and that is the way that identity services in these clouds are being attacked, especially in Azure. Azure's cloud directory services, they are a lot more complicated to set up and secure than the old on-premise Active Directories. It's not that you can't do it, it's just whenever there is complexity, you add in risk. And this risk is exposing a lot of customers, using Azure Active Directory because it's just not set up right. And they need 20-odd products to be able to all work together in concert to find out that this is set up correctly. It's a really complex solution. There are answers to that, but it's not as good as it should be. So let's talk a little here about discovery and posture management itself. So, we need to be able to discover what you have out there first and foremost. Does everybody on this call understand every single application and instance that is being run within, hybrid clouds and have full visibility of them? There's a lot of rogue cloud use that goes on. So being able to find that all and make sure that it is covered is one of the major goals of a security team to make sure that we have that. So we've got to have that discovery capability. We need to identify any unprotected instances that are out there, and we need that data brought back for investigation. Very critical for us. And then we need to monitor and reduce that risk of exposure. Very critical here, again, around once I've discovered it, I need to understand the configurations. I need to look for misconfigurations, and then automatically remediate on those. This person has left this S3 bucket open. It shouldn't be. Close it before it becomes a problem. So we need that visibility, and we don't need this just across AWS. We need it across GCP and Azure as well, because again, we have some customers out there that have standardized on one of these clouds. But they have rogue DevOps teams out there using a different cloud. Maybe that cloud had a specific product that the others didn't that they needed to use. But of course, if they haven't got security involved, how we even know about it? So very important that we can scan those three clouds, find our instances, get that data back in, look at the misconfigurations, find any exposures that we might have, and deal with them in real time. Very, very important. Sounds like basic stuff. You'd be surprised how few people are doing this. It's one of those things where, but maybe my tools from these vendors are enough. Well, these vendors have a lot of tools. But most of them are designed around billing. They're not designed so much around security. So we need that security-centric view of what is going on. And the most important thing we need to do, though, is we need to secure the control plane itself, because this is where the most damage can be done. There are attacks out there that use SSRF attacks to gain access to these clouds, and we need to be able to look at this and very, very quickly stop any problems. Most people, they'll deploy a WAF. It's the web application firewall, and that will enable them to block a lot of stuff out there. But there's been a lot of threats against those WAFs themselves. And they have been actually turned against customers to be able to see that data. And we've seen them gain the access credentials and the access keys and the security access keys through the WAF itself to get direct access then into things like your S3 buckets and exfiltrate data from them. So again, we need to be able to check and monitor that even the basic security tools like a WAF that you would put in front of your applications are set up correctly, working, and they're not being turned against you. So focusing on what matters the most becomes a very, very critical component of what we're doing here. Obviously, Kubernetes and it's a big management system for clouds. Lots of people are using it. It's probably the most common one out there, but it has flaws too. You need to be able to break your applications into microservices and do all those various things you can do. But actors will exploit those containers very quickly. If there's any chink in that armor, and really can start to do quite a bit of damage. And Kubernetes, we've seen security risks in that too, that have actually opened up major risks on the services. So Kubernetes is not the be-all end-all again of security. It's a management system for rolling out microservices quickly and efficiently. You've got to have visibility. You've got to be able to secure your Kubernetes, and you can only do that with a third-party product. So let's now talk about runtime protection and threat hunting itself. So we've got visibility into the stuff now that we can't normally see, but now we've also got our container images running and running usually Linux. We need to be able to view those and see what they're doing, and really sort of bring in a lot of stuff here. So what we need to do essentially is cloud EDR here. Now, most of the EDR stuff here is going to be the same as doing servers on-premise. Really, in the container, it's the same thing. But there are cloud-specific information that you want to bring in there as well. You need to know which container this is in, for instance. You may be auto-scaling up containers of the same microservice to deal with volume. So, and these things are very ephemeral. You need to know what container happened at what time and things like that. Some of the other really important things that you need to monitor here is I think called drift. So a container, when it's created in your CI/CD pipeline, it's there. But when it goes live, a lot of services in there may go, oh, I'm checking, I've got an update, I'm going to update myself, I'm going to change this about me. So the actual image you're running is not the image that you've approved, because a lot of these updates happen live. So doing this drift detection to understand the changes that are happening while that image is running live is a critical part of any cloud EDR solution. So we need to be able to do that. We also need to be able to support Kubernetes where, we need to really what we call sidecar in, the sort of EDR technology here. It's much easier to do that, in Kubernetes with the technology it has than trying to run the actual antivirus EDR, whatever security agent you want to put there, within the container itself. It's much more efficient. It's like the days when we were running our own ESXi servers, we would put the AV actually on the base image, so all of the containers could use it rather than installing in every every container itself. It's no different here in Kubernetes. We sidecar and want to use that to look at all of the containers simultaneously. But we can also then use that to analyze the data going between the containers too. So that gives us a lot of ideas, especially if we see a problem in one container and they're trying to laterally move into other containers. So you need that visibility between containers as well as within containers. So securing them becomes very, very critical, and then being able to see that movement to see where those problems are, again, is going to help the SOC team very quickly identify those threats, how it got in, what is it doing, what has it changed, what has been the attack and the TTPs of this attack. So all of this thing really needs that sort of incident-based approach, which can then also show you that in one sort of graph-based view as it comes in through the WAF, does what it does there. We're seeing it in some issues in the control plane. It then goes into the containers where the cloud workload protection starts to monitor what it's doing, and we see that attack as it moves through. You need to piece that all together. You can't have these as all separate detections and separate events. It takes a fair amount of time to put them all together. You need at your fingertips instantly that capability to bring out that data and really sort of bring it in. So we need visibility. As I mentioned earlier, security is all about visibility, but we also need to know threat hunting. And we need to know what adversaries are targeting that threat. So you need to know your adversaries. This is really important. It's part of what Crowdstrike's strategy has always been about how we've become so good at stopping breaches, is because we actually put a huge amount of effort in our threat intelligence team into actually understanding the adversary. What are their TTPs? What are they going after right now? What CVEs are they exploiting? all of those things which help us identify the adversary that's targeting you, and then once you know who's targeting you, you know what they're going to do next. One of the most amazing things is security is when you can predict the right next move and be able to block that. So this becomes very, very critical, for what we need to do there. So the cloud infrastructure, knowing who's attacking it, we need to build into DevOps to turn into DevSecOps. And we need to get that build infrastructure all covered as well. So that covers your entire attack surface in the cloud by taking into account all of those areas. So, that attack surface becomes very, very critical here. And there are parts of that attack surface you don't even start to think about until you deploy that visibility. So it covers the whole spectrum of attacks that are out there against the cloud today. So we just have to eliminate as many blind spots as we can here. So last couple of slides for you. So I'm going to talk now a little bit about some of the latest cloud attacks that we're seeing, one in particular really. Now this is more private cloud than public cloud, but of course you can be using the public cloud as a tin and doing this yourselves. But this is one of the most prevalent things that we're seeing out there today. And this is what we call hypervisor jackpotting. We have blogs on our website about this. I go into this in a lot more detail than I'm going to go in here now. So if you want to understand the TTPs and get the indicators for this and those types of things, please go visit the Crowdstrike blog and look at we've done 2 big blogs in the last few months on hypervisor jackpotting. So give you a little bit here of a sort of timeline of what we're seeing. So back in February of this year, we started seeing 2 of the really big game hunting adversaries, both Carbon Spider and Sprite Spider, start targeting ESXi servers with ransomware. And these are some of the biggest ones. Again, most of the way that we talk about these adversaries, these are typically, from our point of view, the people selling these services. So, not the people buying them and then deploying them. There's thousands of them. But we concentrate our adversaries in looking at the people who are selling these services rather than buying them. So we see, Carbon Spider and Sprite Spider really start to ramp this up in February 21. So this was before any CVEs were out. They found exploits, probably bought these exploits on the dark web, and we're starting to use them against people, and starting to pop these, and getting access into all of your images running on your ESXi servers. We then see Babuk Loader offer an ESXi variant in March. So now we have got ransomware that spreads through ESXi servers. And like the way most of these things happen, the threats get picked up by some of the smaller e-criminals out there. So Cyborg Spider then releases their variant to do this with the Sire ransomware. Pinchy Spider comes out with their Revix ransomware, and then Viking Spider in June as well also released their version of the Ragnar Locker. So for ESXi. So clearly there is a major problem out there that is not being patched, because all of these adversaries are jumping on this bandwagon and are being very successful at doing this. So again, patching, by the time we got to May, CVEs were out and they were known and patches were available, yet there was still a lot of success as we went through the summer here with these, being popped, ransomware going in, and we all know what happens next. How do you protect your clusters? I mean, what should you be doing here to actually protect them? So this is, now we know there's a problem, how do we go solve it? So first things first, avoid any direct access to the ESXi hosts whatsoever. If you can't get to the ESXi host from outside, great. There's ways to, if it is necessary, use a hardened jump server with MFA, because this is how they get. No, this is how they're getting in. So if there is no direct access to that host, they can't be popped. Then you need to also ensure that vCenter is not exposed at all to the internet over either SSH or HTTP. We also need to make sure that the data store volumes are regularly backed up off server. Because again, if something did happen, we need a backup. This is the typical thing. If ransomware happens, what do? We get our backups. What do we do if we don't have the backups? That's when we have a major problem. And then really start, and this is a really critical thing, if you do detect encryption activity, never shut the host down. This is one of those things, it sort of feels counterintuitive to what you think you should do. Oh, we've got a problem, let's shut it down. That's the worst thing you can do. Because actually, it can't, because typically in a container, almost every file is locked because it's running. So the encryption of the important stuff cannot happen until you reboot that container. And because everything is not locked to start off with, then the ransomware hits and encrypts everything. So never ever shut the host down. If you have backups, you feel confident in that, maybe do it. Let it run its thing, then just kill the container, go to backups and bring it back up again. Obviously, you're still going to have the same threat that infected you the first time, still being able to attack you again. So again, visibility, seeing how they got in, what did they do, being able to close down those things, very, very important. So to sort of wrap that up, the best cloud security approach you can take is you need to know what you're looking for. You've got to discover those assets. Once you know what you need to protect, then you can protect it. Then you need to reduce the attack surface as much as possible. Again, this is pretty much security 101, but it's surprising how few people do this in the cloud. Because mainly it's been the Wild West out there for the last couple of years. This is why, security and operation and DevOps have had to come together, because we can't let it be the Wild West anymore. Too many attacks, too many threats to our brand, too many threats to our share price, things of that nature happening out there. So reducing the attack surface and then monitoring and securing those assets. Because even like when we've discovered, even when we reduce attack surface, nothing is infallible. As time has told us, everybody gets hacked, and the people that haven't been hacked, they just don't know they have been. So we need to be able to monitor and secure those things to the best of our abilities, in a way that still allows the business to run and do its thing. And this is one of the beauties of the way that Crowdstrike, for instance, is designed stuff, is that we've embraced that DevSecOps pipeline. I mean, we use it ourselves. I mean, for years we've been one of the largest cloud vendors out there. Our threat graph is dealing with over 1 trillion events every day now. So we have one of the largest security data lakes in the world. We have been a big target ourselves for many, many years. So we've embraced this and learned, and even internally, and now we're taking all of that knowledge that we've built up of doing this ourselves and productionizing that, giving that out to customers. So with that, I'll end there. If anybody has any questions.
Absolutely, yeah. We have a lot of great questions for you coming in. While we take those questions, I'm just going to bring up this poll for everyone out there that says, what additional information would you like about Crowdstrike? And we'll leave that up, let everyone respond. So Spencer, let's see, a lot of great questions coming in. I am just going through some of these. First one I see that looks really good here. They're asking, how does Crowdstrike detect and prevent zero-day attacks?
Well, great question. I mean, again, we could be here a long time talking about that. There's a whole set of things that really you have to look at with zero-day. Something bad is going to happen with zero-day, something out of the norm. So there is, activity, and being able to monitor sort of everything that is going on. And this is one of the sort of critical things about EDR, is that, yes, we have a ton of data, but when those 0 days come in, your traditional AV will miss them, especially as most of it are fileless attacks these days as well. often using stolen credentials that just bypass security because you feel like, well, this is a normal person coming in, and then they'll launch something new against you. So we have ML models that have been trained on billions of different executables, and we look at how they work in the system and what are they trying to do, because anything zero-day is going to be doing something different and doing something that shouldn't happen. And for us, the ML that we use in building those models picks that stuff up really, really well. Now, it might not pick it up right at the first moment. Once the executable is dropped onto the system, it might not pick it up till it's run. But the really important thing here, by taking the approach that we do, is yes, some things don't get stopped at the moment they're downloaded, but we stop the breach. By letting something run a little bit further than sometimes some people feel a little uncomfortable. Oh, you've run that a little bit further. Thing is, we've never let that data get out of the network. We've never let that thing actually, start encrypting files or start doing bad things. But we've let it run enough that we know what it's trying to do before we stop it. And our ML models are very good at that. And it again, it's been, I've been in the security industry for years, over 20 years now. And when I first joined Crowdstrike, one of the big hurdles for me mentally getting over was this sort of fact that, shouldn't it stop it right at the very first instance? And actually, if that's your only point you can stop, you're going to miss stuff. That's why we're in a different world of endpoint security today than we were 10 years ago. That traditional methodology, it was great for 99% of stuff. And look at all of these AV tests that say, boom, we stopped 99.9% of stuff. It doesn't matter if you stop 99.9%, it's that 0.1% that gets through and kicks you in the butt. So by allowing things to run just that little bit further means that we get better visibility into what that thing is trying to do, and our ML models are able to pick up bad stuff very quickly.
Excellent. I like that. That's great points. Another question here from Doug, who's asking, does Crowdstrike provide a service for proactive threat hunting?
Absolutely. So we're one of the pioneers in the space. We launched a product called Overwatch many years ago now. It's one of the first add-ons that we had to our EDR product back in 2014. And Overwatch was designed to work at massive scale. So unlike some of a lot of the MDR type vendors, the threat hunting vendors that are out there today, that throw a lot of humans at it, and they do a few thousand different searches for me a day, and here's some of the they're grabbing all the latest TTPs and stuff and running it across large SIMs and things like that. It's not the way you can do this at scale. We are looking, again, we have a lot of what we term low-level detects. These are things that we should never, ever throw a detection on to an end user because they're so prone to false positives. They would be so noisy, you wouldn't want to see them. But actually, this is where the real interesting stuff lies, the stuff that can get missed. And Overwatch does an amazing job at finding hands on keyboards. Because, again, if somebody comes in with a totally legitimate VPN, login and token, and gets in and starts doing some things on a machine, they don't run anything. They haven't run Mimikatz yet, or anything like that. That a security tool is going to go, whoa, stop. They're crafty. They sit there and they do things slowly, and they move around, and they try and turn standard network tools and things against you. But all of these things end up being whitelisted mainly in companies. So we're generating these little low-level detects all of the time. And looking and basically searching through those low-level detects to find the really, really nasty stuff, the nation state in particular types of attacks. They're trying to steal your intellectual property, trying to manipulate finance systems and those types of things, where that for us is really, really important. Most of our customers will purchase that product, and actually we're launching that very shortly for our cloud-based products as well. So they'll be looking at not only the EDR data, which they do today for the CWP side of cloud, but we're also going to extend that and have a lot of low-level detects for CSPM, where we're looking at the logs and stuff like that, and to really sort of try and pull out a lot of very interesting things. But the thing that's really critical in all of this stuff these days is identity. Identity is becoming the linchpin of what we're doing in the zero trust net environment. Identity is so important. So controlling your identity services becomes critical, and being able to say, well, this person is doing something they're not doing today. Maybe we need to throw up an MFA against them quickly just to check they are who they say they are is critical. I mean, I'll give you an example. Today, we saw 500,000 Fortinet VPN credentials dumped into the dark web for free. Here you go, username and passwords, 500,000 of them. Now, you can bet within minutes they're downloaded and people are starting to use them. So, again, you've got to have this, very broad spectrum approach to security to understand all the threats, where they're coming from, how they're doing it, and how, that identity has become very critical there.
Absolutely. Yeah, great point, Spencer. I'm afraid we're running out of time here in our live Q&A, but there are, I count 25 other electronic questions for you. So obviously a lot of excitement and interest in what you all are doing there at Crowdstrike. Perhaps you can get back to some of those folks electronically. But thank you so much for being on the event today, Spencer.
No problem. I shall have a look at those questions right now and see if I can respond.
Excellent. Thanks so much. All right. And thank you to our audience, of course, for all the excellent questions. And I appreciate everyone here who responded to the poll as well. And with that, it's now time to move on to our next presentation on today's Ecocast. I'm excited now to welcome Isman Abubakar, who is a developer advocate at AirKit. Isman, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Thanks for being on the event today. Glad to have you. Take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. So today we're going to take a look at AirKit, how to build customer-facing apps 40x faster. So let's jump right in. Who are we? We were founded by the same team behind RelateIQ, which was the first AI-powered CRM, which RelateIQ was later acquired by Salesforce and later became known as Salesforce Einstein. And so while this team was at Salesforce, they saw how every company struggled to automate their customer experience, and they struggled to respond to their increasingly digital-first customer. And so AirKit was actually founded to solve this exact problem. We are backed by top-tier investors and have been working with many Fortune 500 companies. And so these are just some of the companies and brands that we have been working with. AirKit is used to automate customer experience across all of these industries, right? Whether it's the insurance industry, state and local governments, financial services, consumer services, whatever there's a touch point with the customer, AirKit can be used to automate that customer experience. And so what we've seen is with the world moving to a digital-first economy, your customers expect best-in-class digital experiences across all devices, all browsers, and across multiple channels. And in order to meet these expectations, typically we've seen that this essentially requires more development resources. And the reason why is because you have to actually build out these digital experiences. And what we've seen with our customers is that when building out these applications or these digital experiences for these digital-first customers, there are a few different approaches here, right? There's the approach of building it yourself in-house, where you manage the infrastructure, you manage the code base, and although it provides you the most flexibility, it will require extensive engineering resources. For legacy low-code platforms, so we see some customers have these legacy low-code platforms. They give you the ability to accelerate quickly in that development cycle, but you trade off the production-grade quality. You trade off some of the enterprise-grade features, such as security and compliance. And so that's where AirKit comes in. With AirKit, you can use these powerful building blocks that are built into the platform to deliver these digital interfaces that are integrated with your existing systems or integrated with your core systems. And so what that means is you can ship higher quality apps to impact revenue and even burn down through your engineering backlog way faster and be able to slash your maintenance costs. And so let's jump into the meat of it, right? How does AirKit do it? With AirKit, we have powerful building blocks, or in the platform, what we call controls, that you can leverage when building out applications. We also have pre-built integrations, whether they're out of the box or custom integrations that connect and extend to your ecosystem, right? So whether you want to connect with existing APIs that you have built out, or if you want to build on top of those, you can do so with AirKit. AirKit apps are also embeddable. They can be embedded into your existing digital properties, or you can have standalone applications that you publish and deploy for your customers. You can also build out these multi-channel or multi-experience applications and really meet your customer where they are, whether that's via voice, SMS, or email, or even through the web. You can build out these multi-experience applications. And along with that, we have secure and compliant controls that help you build out secure and compliant applications. And so at a high level, what we've seen in some systems, they're great at aggregating your customer data in one place, but they're not really great at using that data to trigger personalized digital experiences. And so when your customers are ready to, to trigger out those personalized digital experiences when your customers are ready to engage with your sales or services team. And so what AirKit does is it connects your existing CRM, your existing contact centers, or even your existing systems of records to your customer data. And so you can essentially deliver this one-on-one personalized experience with your customers at that moment of intent. So this is really about driving that customer interaction and driving that customer action, right? So let's use the example of checking on the status of a loan or a claim. And you can have your rep, or you can have an automated system provide the customer a link to check on their status. So they get sent a link via SMS or via email, and you can actually create a self-service experience without having your customer call in, and you can actually harness that data and that currently exists in your system and provide it to your customer. And so here are just some of the use cases that we've seen AirKit automate digital customer experiences with our customer. One use case that is pretty common is digital deflection for these high volume and routine use cases. A lot of our customers are using this to help automate their contact centers and to deflect calls that are coming into their contact centers that require representatives or require agents to be on the phone, and to deflect these calls into these self-service experiences. And these are typically for these high volume, low motion requests, such as getting your order status or getting your claim status or loan scheduling. Data that you already have that's currently existing on your system, and bringing it to the customer without any, without having to have someone actually be there for the customer, right? It's a self-service experience. This helps speeds up the service that, and also lowers the cost to serve the customer. Typically, we see customers achieve actually a 30 to 50% digital intake, which actually lowers down the cost per call by 40%. Another common use case that we've seen is digital scheduling, which we've seen improve our customers' connect rate by 2x. This is because you're actually able to get the customer to see, to schedule their callbacks based off of that customer's convenience. And within this process, with AirKit, you can actually provide these omni-channel reminders via text, via phone or email, to increase those potential connect rates with our customers, which can then lead to potential revenue. The last big use case that we've seen AirKit help automate the customer experience for our customers is digitizing paper forms. One particular use case is automated enrollment. And we'll actually see in today's demo a paper form that has been digitized using the ERKit platform, right? These are really complex, multi-page forms that whether you have to mail or call in to get your status, these can all be digitized with ERKit. And with the current customer data that you have, you can even create a process, to create a journey is what we call it, to reduce that and pre-fill these fields to reduce that customer burden, reduce that customer effort so that you can then acquire that customer faster. And within this, there's also the notion of session management, where if a user or customer is filling out these forms and let's say they get interrupted, you can actually see where the customer dropped off, preserve that session state, and set up a reminder, sending a text message to that individual. Say, hey, it looks like you dropped off. Can you come back and fill out your form, right? And so with ERKit, you can actually build out experiences that traverse across these channels and preserve that session state. And so here you can see some of the metrics that we've seen with some of our customers. We've seen with MetLife, we've seen a 50% increase in completion rates as a result of digitizing some of their more complex forms. We've seen with Farmers Insurance, we've seen a 2x increase in connect rates after enabling a digital scheduling solution for them. With OpenTable, we've seen a 75% reduction in cost through a digital deflection use case as well. And ADAC, which is a European towing company, we've seen a 30% improvement in customer satisfaction using digital deflection for roadside assistance. And so ERKit is helping these companies increase their customers' revenue while saving them costs at the same time, and then ultimately providing their customers a better customer experience. And so how do we automate? With ERKit, we have a single platform to automate the digital customer experience. And so when we built out this platform, we wanted to give customers the developer speed, but without sacrificing quality or any of the features you need to be enterprise grade or production ready. And so these are just some of the things that that are needed for an enterprise solution when it comes to customer experience or customer engagement, right? You need to be able to support every conversational channel, and so we built that into the platform. And you need to reach the customer where they are, whether that's via voice, via email, via SMS, or more. And another thing here is that it's often difficult to cross these channels and preserve context and to tie those customer experiences together. And so one thing that ERKit does is that you can actually swap channels without losing context and keep that customer path. So for example, if I called in from a support line and they asked to fill out a form or information, the agent or rep can send me an SMS with a unique URL that is specific to me in my session. And oftentimes you don't even need an agent or rep. You can actually have an IVR system deflect that and capture that user's or that customer's phone number and use that as an ID to get information to pre-fill out a form. With ERKit, you can also connect to your systems of records wherever your customer data resides and be able to kind of pass data back and forth, right? And so you can connect to your existing CRM. You can connect to systems or data sources that leverage an API. We have out-of-the-box integrations and also the concept of custom integrations where you can bring your own systems and ERKit can create a connection and leverage that as you build that out. And you're going to need to be able to rapidly deliver and build out these digital experiences. And so we built out a studio that's completely web-based where you don't need to download an ID. You don't need to download any packages. You can actually build your applications within a modern web browser. And within that studio, we have these building blocks, as well as these templates and these controls that make building out these digital experiences much quicker. And so when it comes to building out also these enterprise scale solutions, we have DevOps and deployment features, such as the ability to have different deployment profiles, different environments, a one-click publishing model and even a debugger within the browser to help you build out your applications. And then lastly, to kind of wrap that up, how do we gauge our user interaction with the apps that we're building? And so we have built-in analytics and built-in reporting and dashboards to give us insights on how to improve these user interactions. And so with AirKit, you can see some of these controls here on the screen are just some of the different controls that you can use to build out your applications. And so our team studied what we decided to create the best digital experiences, and we found patterns in them and distilled those into these pre-built components to create these digital experiences, right? So we have a scheduler control where users can select available time slots, or an e-signature control where someone can sign their name, or credit card controls or payment request controls that are PCI compliant, and you can capture information to, or either and maybe update your payment information or update your credit card information within there. And there's also the ability to build out your own custom controls. So you're not limited to the controls that are out of the box within AirKit. You can build your own custom controls and leverage those for your applications. And with these building blocks, you can actually configure these building blocks into templates. And so you can snap them together and build out these experiences that you can reuse to develop faster and help you get off the ground faster. We have out-of-the-box templates that you can see kind of here, customer satisfaction, channel swapping, call scheduling, or you can kind of create your own application experience, and you can create that within the platform. And so you're able to keep that speed to develop using these pre-built templates and controls, but also leverage the customization and flexibility based off of your own use case. And you can see here, this is the AirKit Studio. And the AirKit Studio is where you define your business logic. It's where you orchestrate that journey for the customer. And so the first thing you do is really define the trigger of the journey. And you want to just determine whether the app starts via a link or via an API. And so we'll actually be taking a look at this in just a little bit as we demo the AirKit Studio. And so with AirKit, you are ultimately able to build out these applications and build out these experiences faster using an omni-channel service and meeting your customers where they are, but at the same time working with your existing systems. And so let's go ahead and take a look at the AirKit Studio. And so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. And you can see here, I am logged into studio.airkit.com. And this is where, this is essentially the studio. It works in a modern web browser. And you can see the journey that I've built out here. And so I've determined for this particular journey, this is an auto FNOL app, a first notice of loss app, where if you get into an accident, you can file a claim and upload pictures and start that claim process through this application. And so here I'm in Journey Builder. And Journey Builder is where you can actually see your entire journey, right? And so you can see this is kind of where this is where the journey takes you when a user clicks on a web link, or if that claim is initiated via an API. So if I have another system that is initiating this journey, I can do so through the Initiate Claim API that I've created within AirKit. And so this is the journey, and if we actually kind of dive a little bit deeper, I can actually double click into these components here, and I can actually add different controls and add labels. I can add inputs. I can essentially add these building blocks into my app to build on top of it. And so these are essentially going to be the list of controls that I can add here. If I wanted to, I can also add templates to my controls as well. So some of these templates are essentially Kit Cloud templates is what we call them. And they're common use cases so that essentially develop and speed up that development process. With AirKit, you also have full control over the styling. And so you can see here on the right-hand side, all of the different styles that I can add to my app. And I can also preview my application as well. And so to preview my application, I can just go ahead and click on the app preview icon up in the top right-hand corner. And I can actually view my application and test and debug my application before publishing. So whether I'm building an app for a mobile device, whether I'm building a responsive app for a desktop, I can actually see that experience all within the browser. And on the right-hand side, you can see the session state at each step that the user is actually using your application. You can see the data that's associated with that app, with your application here. And so with a one-click deployment model, I can go ahead and click on Publish, and go ahead and click on the Publish icon. And there I have a live web link. And this web link will essentially launch my experience, or I can use the API, which is actually what we're going to be doing today. And so here I have Postman, and I also have a web browser here of my phone. And with Postman, I'm going to initiate my FNOL claim. And so I'm going to go ahead and click on Send. I'm going to do a post request to this. And you can see here on my mobile device, I get a text message. So it's welcome to AirKit. Please complete your claim using the following link. And all of this data should be pre-filled into my application. So if I go ahead and click on that link, I can see that my application has pre-filled information here. I can go ahead and click on Next, and I need to enter in my vehicle details. I just got into an accident, so I can look up by my VIN number, or I can set it up manually. So let's go ahead and pick a car here. And I'm going to go ahead and click on Next. Who is driving your vehicle, me or someone else? I'll just say it was myself. So let's put in date of an incident. You can see here that I have a date picker control. I can put in the time. I hit a tree. And I have a drop-down list here. I can describe that incident. Where did the incident occur? I can, this is a Google Map control. That's actually an out-of-the-box control here. And I can actually move my accident and kind of pinpoint exactly where that accident happened. So let's go ahead and click on Next. You can see here this is a checkbox control, describe the damage. I can also upload any photos of the damage, right? So we have these built-in controls that are built in already. So let's go ahead and select a picture of a car hitting a tree. Let's go ahead and click on Next. Luckily, no one was injured. If someone was injured, I have this form that you can actually make be reflexive and dynamic, whether someone was injured or not. Are there other vehicles involved? Yes. Okay. Let me add a vehicle, and you can see some of these controls are being reused across the platform. Let's go ahead and click on Next here. I get my claim summary. I can see all of the details that I've entered in prior to that. And let's go ahead and submit this claim. And a claim number gets generated, but I also receive a text message here. And you can see here it says, "Hi, your claim for this car, 2022 Acura NSX, has been submitted." And so you can see the data actually gets saved from my application to this and gets sent I get sent a text message. So it preserves that data, preserves that session state. And if I wanted to, I can go ahead and check my claim status here. Opens up a new browser. I can see my claim summary, which has all of my data already there. I can also track the claim status and see, okay, hey, it's been submitted. And then whenever that claim status gets updated, I can then see it through my application and maybe receive a text message whenever that happens as well. And so you can see here through this demo, with AirKit, you can build out these omni-channel experiences. You can build out these these digital experiences, whether it's through a text message, whether it's through a video, or whether it's through, sorry, not video, a voice call, and be able to actually meet your customer where they are at that intent, and work with them and create these digital experiences for them. All right. So any questions?
Absolutely, yeah. We do have quite a few questions for you. A really cool demo. Thank you so much for sharing that. That was cool. That's the only word I can use to describe it. It was just really cool. a live application. So I love that. We do have some questions, and while we do those, I'll just bring up this poll question for everyone out there. We appreciate your feedback on this. What additional information would you like about AirKit? And from all these questions, obviously, folks are excited about this. So let's see. First question, I'll just start with this one. They're asking, how long does it typically take to build out your first application?
That's a great question. So from a developer standpoint, or from a builder standpoint, actually, it really just kind of depends on what your use case is. In terms of kind of what we recommend as building out your first application, which is essentially a simple form, a form that captures users' information, a form that can actually store that data into what we call our own data store, so it's called Air Data, and provide kind of feedback to that end user that's filling out that form. Typically, it would take around, with a walkthrough, it would take about like 10 to 15 minutes. But if you're building out a little bit more complex forms, we do have training that's available at airkit.com/training, where we kind of walk you through the different patterns and the different processes on how to actually build out your applications. And so for your very first app, we can actually build out an app within 10 to 15 minutes. For some more complex apps, we definitely have training that's available that we can go through and help you build out whatever your use case is.
Nice. Here's a good question. Where's the AirKit data stored, and is it secure or encrypted?
Yeah, definitely. So AirKit data, or data is stored essentially at on AWS data centers, and it is encrypted at rest. And so you can actually go to airkit.com/security to kind of we have a whole FAQ on just the security and compliance aspect around AirKit data that you can actually see and kind of get more details on there. Great question.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Next question, does AirKit have all the compliance rules to allow us to follow state guidelines when we build our applications?
That is a great question. So it depends on kind of what compliance rules you're talking about. But with AirKit, you can build out TCPA compliant apps. Typically, those are the when it comes to kind of state guidelines, that's typically kind of what I believe you might be referring to. But TCPA compliant apps, or with TCPA compliance, you essentially can't send text messages or can't send voice calls during specific hours. And so with AirKit, we actually have these built-in calendars and these built-in schedules that you can actually, and these controls that allow you to build out these TCPA compliant experiences where, let's say, there's a scheduled text to be sent out, but it's outside of the TCPA compliant hours. With that, you can actually have a toggle that says, hey, do we want to send this text out after, so like the next available time slot? Do we want to schedule it anyways? So let's say if a customer happened to say that, hey, opt-in, send me text whenever, it's okay. But if you want to remain TCPA compliant, we do have those toggles within the controls that are using or that are sending out these text messages.
Got it. Okay. Another question: where can we download the building block templates?
Great question. So the building block templates are actually built into the studio, and so to actually get access to those building block templates, there's actually no need to download. There's actually like a Kit Cloud marketplace, if you will, And so if you go to airkit.com and sign up for your free trial, you can actually use the studio and leverage those applications and leverage those building blocks right out of the box. So there's actually no need to download anything on that regard. You can actually use those right out of the box.
Nice. I like that. Let's see. Jason's asking, what level of in-house engineering experience is recommended to get started with AirKit?
Great question. So it really depends, right? So we have the way that I like to kind of look at it is that as a builder, you should be comfortable with maybe creating using Excel functions and creating Excel macros. The reason why I say that is because the core language of AirKit is what we call AirScript. And AirScript is essentially our Excel-inspired language that has a multitude of functions, whether it's like date-time functions, whether it's string functions, math functions, data transformation functions. These functions are essentially allow you to take data, pass those as parameters, and get an output. And that's kind of how you work with data within AirKit, is using our AirScript language. One kind of recommendation when it comes to building out applications in AirKit as well is the ability to understand how to use or read and leverage JSON objects. If you are working with applications or working with APIs or even working with data that leverages JSON, those are going to be piped in and transformed within AirKit. And so I would say that's kind of the level of expertise that you need, which is the ability to kind of work with JSON objects. Perhaps if there's custom integrations or APIs they want to work with, so the ability to understand how HTTP requests work, as well as kind of leveraging the AirScript functions and how to use those and the logic that's used within that.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. It looks like, yeah, that's all the time we have, I'm afraid, in our live Q&A here, but there's quite a few more questions still for you there in the electronic queue. If you can get back to those, I'm sure those folks would appreciate it. Isman, a great presentation, really cool demo. Thanks for being on.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
And thank you to everyone who responded there to the poll. Don't forget about the handouts tab. It's there that you can get more information on these solutions, including how to build customer applications 40 times faster with AirKit, right there if you want to download that resource and check it out. I do want to now announce the winner of our next Amazon $500 gift card. This is going to Tim Wardlow from California. Congratulations, Tim Wardlow from California. We've got another gift card still to give out after our next presentation. And that means it's now time to introduce you to our next presenter on today's Ecocast. Welcome, Jacqueline Painter, Senior Solutions Product Marketing Manager for Financial Services at Okta. Jacqueline, take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today's session. I'm so excited to be able to talk to you about Zero Trust and what this means for your organization, especially everybody in the financial services space. I'm Jax Painter, and I work at Okta, and I'm the Senior Solutions Product Marketing for our FinServ segment specifically. So what we're going to talk about today are really around three main things. The first one is we're going to talk a little bit about what we see today in the market and what our customers are saying, especially when it comes to Zero Trust and providing better user experiences. We're also going to cover the importance of understanding trusting devices so that you can enable and build a secure workforce for this new world that we're living in. And then lastly, I'm going to highlight a customer that we've kind of been on this journey with when it comes to Zero Trust and making sure that they secure identities and go beyond just identities to really look at the devices they're securing as well. Before we take a deep dive into all the fun stuff, this is a forward-looking safe harbor statement. As you know, Okta is a public company, so any forward-looking statements in here are subject to change, and you can always read this on your own time if you want some nighttime reading. So most security leaders that we are speaking with today are actively evolving their security strategy to go beyond this traditional network perimeter. And this perimeter really consists of everything inside of the network is considered safe and trusted. Everything outside is considered not safe and not trusted. And this isn't really a viable model, especially when you have resources moving to the cloud. Your workforce needs to be secured when they're working remotely, and you're starting to engage with your customers and consumers in different ways, especially more virtually and digitally. And so as this traditional network perimeter disappears, it's identity that really becomes the new control plane to manage and secure the access across all of your users and devices and networks. And the data is clear here. Identity attacks such as phishing or credential stuffing are the leading cause of breaches today. So this really just shows the importance of taking a look at your identity and device security policies as we move away from the traditional castle and moat network perimeter. This is a fun slide that I put together. We've probably heard this way too much, but COVID really has accelerated a lot of what we're seeing today. And this is especially true for financial services organizations. A lot of companies, like I've talked about before, they're having to move their workforce remotely, who have to access applications from different devices at different times. And they're also having to look at how they engage with their customers. And so everything is becoming more remote, and it's here to stay. And so again, this is accelerated dramatically because it was table stakes for financial services organizations. In order to continue their business continuity plans, everything was really in person at a physical bank branch location, for instance, and everything has moved to be more virtual and remote. So I really wanted to talk about what the world is today because it has changed dramatically. And as we've talked to customers at Okta, there's a few patterns that have really started to emerge, and I think some are true today, now more than ever. The first one is multiple resource types. If you look at enterprises and how most of the enterprises are out there today, one thing that becomes extremely apparent is not only your cloud footprint is growing, maybe from an app and resource perspective, but you also have a lot of legacy on-prem applications that you have to deal with. So you're in this hybrid world where your cloud footprint is growing faster and faster, but you also have to worry about how you figure out and deal with that legacy on-prem footprint that you still have. The second piece is multiple networks. And it's not just your internet or your enterprise internet, but it's your growing cloud footprint as well. You probably have a mixture of AWS, GCP, and Azure when you're running different workloads to support all those different use cases. And that's only going to continue to become even more true over the next few years. The third one is probably more true now than ever before, and I've already talked about this, but it's your distributed workforce. This is like having your employees or your contractors and partners access your resources, not just from their home, but multiple locations. How many times are we, checking our email or logging into applications on the go or, through our mobile device? The fourth one is really around compromised credentials. And this is more true every day. We just saw in that statistic before, but compromised credentials is a leading event that is happening, especially for financial services. And really, again, it all starts with identity. The fifth one is that there's thousands and thousands of devices and millions of signals because you have your end users connecting to your resources from not just multiple locations, but also multiple and different devices. And so all of these devices have various signals, like what operating systems are they running? Are they jailbroken? What unmanaged signals do you need to think about? Things like that. And so making sense of these signals and understanding how to deal with this device management from a security perspective is going to become really, really, really important. And then related to that is bring your own device. And this is becoming more prevalent because now it's no longer just my personal laptop or my work laptop that's managed, but I'm also accessing from mobile phones, from iPads, from all different types of personal devices. And a great example for me is, sometimes I'm on the run and I need to check an email or check a document, and I have to I access it through my phone. And so it's really happening in all industries, but it is very prevalent, especially in the financial services space. And then lastly, you probably have a lot of security tools, and it's probably because you have a couple of tools, maybe for your endpoint security management, maybe some for your mobile device management, but then you also have multiple tools for managing all of your different devices. You're continuing to use something like SCCM for Windows, or maybe something like Jam for Mac or Intune. It's the mixture of all these devices that need to achieve all these different security goals. So you're using multiple tools to manage your entire enterprise. And so this really comes down to, there's a lot of different stakeholders that have various needs and very similar goals. And so it's really interesting because it brings this paradigm of balancing this user experience with security. And this has been a challenge that just hasn't started today. It's been something that we've been battling for a very long time. And you can't expose too many restrictions because then you lose efficiency. But then you also want to make sure that you secure everything, especially as you move beyond this legacy type of network perimeter. And your end users are saying, I want access to everything as soon as possible, this instant gratification. They don't want added friction, and they just want to be able to do their jobs and do it quickly. Then from an admin perspective, very similarly, they want to be able to enable that experience, but they want to make sure that they can do it with low risk and a low effort, because they don't want to spend the cycles of having to reiterate. And then lastly, you have your CISOs and your VPs that are thinking, okay, I want to definitely enable this, but it needs to be secure, efficient, collaborative, but it also needs to be secure and compliant and done in a regulatory manner. And so these are very different needs with all very similar goals, and it's very hard to achieve, and it's not something that can be done overnight. So again, this is a study that we did, and it's really around balancing that UX with security and some of those problems that I've already highlighted. But this really is around organizations are struggling with security concerns and efficiency concerns. These really go hand in hand when looking at your zero trust strategy. So security leaders that we are talking to are really struggling to keep up with this threat landscape. They're having to, again, mitigate risk and everything involved with that, but then be agile and innovate and provide a better working experience to really reduce that friction, but also create more efficiencies within the organization. And they're having to do that with limited bandwidth and resources. And this becomes a big challenge. And a lot of leaders are starting to ask, how do I prioritize this? Where do I start? Prioritization is going to be key. And this really means that identity is the new perimeter. It's that single control plane across all of your users, all of your devices, all of your networks. And this is really where a lot of professionals that we talk to are starting their zero trust journey. but it's really important to kind of look at not only where are you starting from a journey perspective and identity, but also what are the top focus areas in financial services when they are starting this journey. And you'll see here in this in the graph to the right, it's all about a better user experience by implementing SSO, passwordless access, but then balancing that with context-based policies. So again, seeing this theme of identity is definitely the starting point, but making sure that your plans are always thinking about better security and a better user experience. So this is a great segue into passwords. They're everywhere, and the reality is that that's just how it is in the world we live today. We have passwords and credentials for every application, whether it's for work or from a personal perspective. And then the question becomes, well, who likes passwords? And I don't think it's anyone. I don't like passwords. You probably don't like passwords. I think the only people that do like passwords are hackers. And it's interesting because the reason why is we put a lot of trust on the end user. You're putting trust in the user that they are careful about which passwords to pick, where they store their passwords or how they memorize their passwords, and what requirements they choose for their passwords. And you can impose different restrictions on them, but ultimately it's really on the user to figure out what passwords they're going to be using. And this is a really hard position to put your users in, because the chances are they'll probably reuse their password in many instances. We're all guilty of this. We've all, probably reused the same password for different applications just because we have to memorize it, or we have to change that password every 3 to 6 months. And so it's just not really secure. And there's a reason why fraudsters and hackers really go towards credentials to infiltrate the organization. So it's really important, especially in this evolving workplace that we're seeing, to extend that trust beyond the user and the identity, because compromised credentials are a reality. And it's important for us to understand how to be proactive about making sure that that'll never be a problem, and how do you reduce risk from that problem. And that's one of the main messages in this presentation, is that we also want to enable device trust, which is a very crucial step to get to that passwordless experience, but also laying that right foundation for your zero trust architecture. And so what that really means is, how do you extend that trust that you put in an end user today and take it beyond them and take it to the device that they're accessing it from? And so the vision to get there is very simple, but when we talk to customers, it often boils down to 3 different categories. First, we want to ensure users are authenticated and devices are secure. Second, we want to broker access to all of your resources to make sure that you've established that trust. And then third, you want to make sure that you grant the right access for the right amount of time. And then this is supposed to be done using any technology. We can automate it at scale, and it has to be done without friction. But the truth is, the reality to get there is really complex. There are a lot of complexities in order to achieve this vision. You have to consider a variety of different users, such as employees, contractors, brokers, agents, all the different networks that you're using, and then all the devices that you're using as well. And you're not just brokering access to cloud apps, but also on-prem apps like we talked about, your networks, and then also your APIs. And this is really important for financial services, especially as you start to share and open up your APIs with third-party providers or fintech providers, so that you can create these new experiences and products and services for your customers. And then you also want to figure out, how do you ensure that the access that you're providing is continually assessed? It's not just a one-time event that happens as they enter the door. It's really about continuing to assess has access and if they have the right entitlements, especially if an employee leaves a company or changes department. How do you know that they should have access based off of the entitlements that they were given? And so doing all this is a very, very, very big undertaking. So the goal is to provide you with a single pane of glass to control all identities and all resources and provide access to everything that your employees need and to everyone. So not just your employees, but your partners, your contractors, your brokers, your machines. At the heart of this, it's really about having this one control plane, the single pane of glass, if you will, and that takes in this risk score engine. And this is so critical because it can take different signals and help determine if and when access should be granted. And hopefully it's granted easily with passwordless authentication. But then if maybe something is risked as high risk, you enable step-up authentication with multi-factor authentication. So that could be mobile push or a one-time passcode or an SMS text message, but really having this process in place to continually evaluate your users and their devices, but do so in a manner that secures your enterprise and your users, but also provides that frictionless experience and only adds that step-up authentication if it's needed. So the real magic behind this control plane for Zero Trust is not just all of the risk signals that you evaluate, but how those signals are shared across your security stack. So we talked about this. You're using a lot of different security tools in your organization today to manage everything that's happening. And so it's important that when you choose a vendor or a solution, you want to make sure that they have deep and a lot of various integrations so that you have the flexibility to integrate into your choice of technology, because the reality is things are going to continue to change. And we've had customers come to us and say, you know, we aren't in the identity business, we're not in the authentication business, we're in the banking business, and that's what we want to do. And as regulations evolve, as the environment and market evolves, we can't keep up and we need help. So it's really important that you make sure that you're able to have that flexibility to pick and choose that security stack that really helps you evolve as your business evolves and as the industry evolves. However, I do know, like we talked about, you are not going to be able to do this overnight. And so I really like to look at all things, even in my personal life and in my job, as a kind of crawl, walk, run stage. And so this is kind of just important to get the foundation down. You want to understand the lay of the land, especially as things are changing. What are the users need? What are the users need when they are working remotely? It's really understanding and laying out that journey that the user would need to take and opening their laptop all the way to accessing and doing recovery to enrollment, because it's very interconnected journey and you can't have any gaps. The second piece is to start authenticating everyone and everything. If you don't have multi-factor authentication today, go get it, go do it. That's the first thing you need to do. The second thing you want to do is, how do you extend that into the devices world? The third piece could almost be in parallel, but it's really setting a roadmap for how you can achieve passwordless and also have a strong multi-factor authentication environment. So it's really starting to think about the different assurance levels and all the factors that you would need based off of your users within your enterprise. So, when do you use SMS versus web compared to things like WebAuthn? How does that relate to your email versus a password? And really setting these buckets of high assurance to low assurance factors so that you can think what that means for your passwordless journey for all of your users and devices. And then eventually you want to get to a place where you have a single place to really understand that device health, the user health risk, and how they're interconnected, so you can really drive intelligent workflows for that journey that you're trying to create. So we created, just click through this, we created an identity first security model maturity model. And this really helps you plan out where you want to get to. Obviously, stage 3 is where you have the most protection and the most adoption. And that really is showing that you're protecting your enterprise and all of your assets and resources and users, but that it's frictionless and it's a better user experience and creating more efficiency. So people are wanting to use the tools that you are giving them more often. And so what I talked through, the crawl, walk, run, was probably in the stage 0, stage 1 stage. And the goal, again, is really to move into that adaptive workforce where you're using those risk-based policy engines, you're using continuous and adaptive multi-factor authentication, passwordless authentication, and you have those integrations across your security stack so you can send those signals to the technologies that you need. So here's an example of a couple customers who just really believe in zero trust and what it's done for their business. One is Blackhawk Network, which is a fintech organization, and they really needed to find that sweet spot that we've been talking about of, you know, being able to build their future with increased security, but also giving them the ability to collaborate and have that peace of mind that it's going to be a frictionless experience. And then AIA is an insurance company, and they saw zero trust play in 2 different ways. One was knowing who was accessing and where they were accessing it from, and then also knowing that regardless, it didn't matter if they were inside or outside the perimeter. So really providing that zero trust framework and mindset when it came to kind of evaluating their security model. So key takeaways here is identity is the new perimeter, and it's a great starting point to initiate zero trust. But you also have to go beyond the user and the identity and make sure that you're enabling device trust, which is really an important part for achieving passwordless authentication, which is going to be a better user experience for your customers. Creating a roadmap and understanding that you're not going to be able to do everything overnight and to use that crawl, walk, run approach. But then also, as you start to become more mature in your zero trust architecture, to look for a solution that can provide that control plane for all of your identities and devices and resources and applications, because you're going to want to be able to integrate into a lot of different security technologies that give you that flexibility now and then into the future. So that's really kind of what's key to be successful in the long run. And now I'm going to kind of go through a couple Q&As that I've seen have kind of come through the chat box here. Here's a question: who would be my key stakeholders if I want to implement zero trust to make sure that it's successful, but it can also get approved? So this is a great question. I think you really have to think about any IT project that you would manage. There's probably multiple touch points in your network. And so it's important for it to be a company-wide effort. And so I think at a minimum, I would suggest getting representation from areas that govern, you know, your people, your data, the network, devices, applications, workloads. I think getting everybody involved from that aspect will really help get buy-in and enable you to create a roadmap by getting everybody's input. So I think that's probably what every stakeholder that kind of touches all those things probably needs to be involved in the conversation, or at least the initial conversation. So with that, I'm going to end it. I very much enjoyed this session. You can contact me if you have any questions outside of this at jacqueline.painter@okta.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn. So thank you again so much, and have a good rest of your day.
Excellent presentation, Jacqueline. Really enjoyed that. We got a lot of great questions as well coming in from the audience. So thank you everyone for those. If you have a question, now is the time to get it in. Lots of interest obviously in Okta and what it can do to better secure your financial IT organization. I've just brought up a poll question for everyone out there. We would like your feedback on this poll. Simply, it asks what additional information you would like about the Okta solution. And I'll leave this up here for you to answer while I announce our final Amazon $500 gift card winner. We have this gift card going out to Phil Phileo from California. Phil Faleo from California. Previous winners were Tim Wardlow from California and Trisha Patterson from Oregon. The northeast of the, the northwest and the west coast is doing well today. Also, don't forget about our best question prizes. We're giving out 4 Amazon $50 gift cards as well. So if you have a question about Okta, now's the time to get it in to be entered into that drawing. And also, I want to remind everyone about our Refer a Friend link. After the event here, you'll be automatically redirected to that page, and we encourage you to refer your IT friends and coworkers, and we do a monthly drawing there for Amazon $300 gift cards for both you and your IT coworkers. All right, thank you to everyone here who responded to the poll. We do appreciate your feedback. Before you go, I want to remind you to connect with us over on social media and subscribe to the 10 on Tech podcast over in the iTunes podcast store. If you are a potential sponsor of an upcoming Megacast or Ecocast event, reach out to us at connect@actualtechmedia.com, and we would love to chat about having you on an upcoming Megacast or Ecocast. I hope that you'll join us on our next Megacast happening next Wednesday on devising cloud strategies and solutions. This is going to be a great event with an awesome lineup of presenters. And as always with our Megacast, we've got a mega lineup of prizes, 5 Apple M1 iPad Pros, and of course, a lot of Amazon gift cards as well. Thank you everyone who joined us today on the Supporting, Improving, and Securing Financial IT and Cloud Environments Ecocast. I learned a lot. I hope that you did as well, and we'll see you next time. Have a great day. Take care.